So we're now on Chav Heyamid Beis, and we're learning a Mishnah in Kalim with regard to the din of 3 avos hatum: sheret, shichva zera, and tomei mes. And these shlosha avos are metame b'maga, and the Mishnah says lamala mehen. That's the last 2 words on Chav Heyamid Aleph. In other words, the more chamuros of them are metame even b'masa. And here we turn to Daf Chav Hey Amud Beis. Zovel shel zav v'roko v'shichva zaro u'meimei raglov v'dam anida mitamin bein b'masa u'bein b'masa, bein b'mago bein b'masa. So we see explicitly here in the Mishnah, like we saw in the Brisa back on Daf Chav Hey Amud Aleph, that Shichva Zerev Zav is Metame even b'Mas. So the Gemara asks, L'chora, you have no proof from this Mishnah that Shichva Zerev Shel Zav is Metame even b'Mas mitzad atzma. Maybe it's mitzad tzchuchei zima. V'dil b'hachinami l'fi sheyefsha below tzchuchei zima. So if not for the fact that there's tzchuchei ziva here, the shichva zer itself would not be tomei. And the Gemara answers him, Cain, lisnei gabi zova. Why is the Mishnah combining shichva zera with the other types of tumah? It should have been listed together with zav. If you're telling me that the tumah is not the tumah of the shichva zera itself coming out of the zav, but rather the tzchuchei ziva. Umayshno de k'tonile gabi roko. Why did the Tana put the din of shichva zera of a zav together with rok? Ella. The reason why the Tana put shichva zera together with rok is mishum di asi mi roko. Because the shichva zera of a zav can be derived, the tumah, can be derived with a kal v'chomer from rok. As we said on Daf Chav Hey Amud Aleph, that if rok, which is tar, when it comes out of a tar, is mitame, when it comes out of a zav, then kal v'chomer shichva zera, which is mitame, even when it comes from another tar, it certainly is mitame when it's Yotze Mizav. And now we're talking about the Ziva itself. For a high Tana de lo Dorish Dayo, we have already Nimta, right? Matzinu, a Tana that doesn't have Dayo at all, period. The Afal Gav de lo Mafrech Kal v'chomer. Even if there'll be some vestige left of the kal v'chomer after the diet, we still do not apply diet. This Sanya, okay, now we talk about mapots. Well, it's real heavy taras. So first of all, what is a mapots? A mapots is like what we would call a mat, M-A-T. Again, I don't have an English translation, so I can't tell you what art school would say. And a mat is called in modern Hebrew a machzelet, and it's made from, pieces of wood that are sort of like woven together, and it's usually used for reclining. Now, b'mes, in tumas all of a mess, the Brisa wants to know minayin. What's the minayin? So to appreciate the minayin, we have to go back to the Torah. In Bamidbar Lamed Aleph, it says v'chol beged. This is with regard to tumas mess. Kol beged v'chol kli or v'chol maseh izin v'chol kli eitz tit chato. So it means that tumas mes applies to a kli or eitz or beged. So whether or not a mapatz is mitame betumas mes, that's the subject of this price. Because a mapatz doesn't fit into any of the categories. It's not a beged, it's not a kli or, it's not a kli eitz. Vidinu. Let's derive this din from a kal v'chomer. Uma pachim ketanim. Pachim ketanim is referring to kli cheres. And these small piece of pottery, the mouth is very, very small. And in Hilchas Tumah V'Tara, pachim ketanim is a kula shetahorim b'zav, which means that even though zav is normally mitame kelim, here in these kelim he's not mitame. Shepiyam kol kach ksar, he writes in the bottom, she'ein etzba adam yechola likones bo. So there's no possibility of maga azav to be mitame. Again, this is way, way beyond our purview. Very complicated, because if it's not royal tama b'mago, it's not mitame behesed hazav. So I have to know more about hesed hazav. That's a whole different story. Okay, anyway. So mapat's mitame be. Now we're talking about medrus hazav. It becomes a mishkav, as we said before. How much more so it should be mitame in an olames. Later on, the Gemara is going to derive this from a gzeira shav. But now the Gemara is operating without the gzeira shav, with the kal v'chomer. The Kamaisi law, the Brisa derives this drasha of tumas mes b'mapatz with a kal v'chomer. Bein l'tumas erev u'bein l'tumas shiva. Now, Tumas Erev means it requires Tvila, and after Shkia, on the day of the Tvila, becomes Tar. Tumas Shiva means you have to have 7 days of Tuma, and then on the 7th day, it requires Tvila, and it becomes Tar. V'amai. So the Gemara has to find Kash. Why does the Bryce have a ribui for Tumas Shiva HaChamura? Ema hani kal v'chomer l'tumas erev. Maybe the kal v'chomer should only teach me tumas erev in the case of a matpatz in an olames. But on the other hand, on the other side, the ahani dayo lafuke tumas shiva, and dayo now comes along. And it limits the kal v'chomer to tumas erev, and you can't apply it to derive tumas shiva. So it means that a zav is metame tumas erev. So we're going to apply the principle of dayal of and adin lios kinodem to exclude tumas shiva. So since we derive from zav, a mapatz is metame the olames, but only for tumas erev, because we're going to apply dayo. If the Brisa doesn't darshan it that way, then it means that this Tana doesn't hold from dayo at all, period. Even in a case where the kal v'chomer is not completely undermined. And the Gemara answers, Amalei Ravina says to Rav Acha, Kvar Rama Niale, this kasha was already asked by Rav Nechumi Bar Zechariah Labai. V'Yomalei Abai answered, Tana, the Tana, the Brisa, did not derive the din of Tumas Mes and Mapatz from a kal v'chomer from Tumas Mes and Pachin Ketanim, but rather from a Gzer Shav. Now, Mapatz B'Sheretz Maisila and Hachi Kamma. So this is a Gzer Shav. Mapotz betuma sheretz minayin. How do we know it's tummy? Vidinu. We're going to derive from a kavachom ma pachim ketanim, which has kli cheres that has that very slight opening. Shetohor b'zav, and nevertheless tmei b'sheretz. The sheretz is metami kadashim. And therefore, it could be metame pachim ketanim, and that which is inside of the pachim ketanim, mapot, which is more chomer, shetame bezav. Right, we said it was royal lemidras. So it's like a mishkav azav. Eino din she'etame b'sheretz. The Kavachomer should certainly teach me that there should be a tuma sheretz. And you can't use dayo over here because the nilmad and the malamed are not matami more than tumas eret. So there's no dayo to limit this tuma from shiva down to yom echad. Elav mapotz bi'oel hames minayin. So where do we derive the din of mapotz in tumas hames? Nemar, another exertion. Beged v'or b'sheretz v'yikru yudal. V'chol asher yipol behem b'mosom yitma mikol v'kli eitz o beged o or. V'nemer beged v'or b'tumas mes. Now we're going to Parshas Chukas. In Vamidbar Lamed Aleph it says v'chol beged v'chol kli or. Ma beged v'or ha'omer b'sheretz. Ma puts tomi bo af beged v'or ha'omer b'meis. Mapotz Tomei Bo. So the Gemara says that for this Gzeira Shava to be valid, it's got to be Mufna. We'll see it later on whether it's Mufna Mishneitza or Mufna Mitzad Echad. But it has to be Mufna, which means it's redundant. The Pasuk is redundant. And therefore we could use it to darshan and create an analogy from Mapotz in Tumas Mes to Mapotz in Tumas Sheretz. Now, whenever you have a Gzeir Shabbat that's not mufna, then it is vulnerable to a pircha. Is equal a mifrach malish sheret shekem etami bechadash tomeis she'eno etami kadash el b'kezayis. So the shear of tuma in the case of sheretz is a chumrah. It's a sheer katan. It's less than a kazai. It's called a kiadasha. It's like a lentil. But in tumas mes, you have a kula. This is paradoxical. In mes, that it's not mitami unless you have a kazai min mes. So therefore, we're not going to mitami even the mapos. So if there's no pasuk, which is mufna, which means it's superfluous, and we only use it for this limud, then the Gzeir Shava has a pircha to it. So Gemara says, "Lai afnuye mufna." You're right. It is mufna. It is redundant. Why? Michdi sheretz is kashli shechvazara. It says, "O ish asher teitze" in the Parashat Vazora. And v'samachli it says a few chapters earlier, "O ish asher yiga b'chol sheretz asher yitma blo," which means that both balkeri and an oger b'sheretz are prohibited and enjoined from eating kosher. Uksiv be b'shechvazera. V'chol beged v'chol ora shayeh olav shechvazara. And from this pasuk we derive the conclusion that tuma shechvazera in kelim is dafka beged or kli or. So beged v'yar dekos rachman alamali. In sheretz, why did the Torah have to say beged v'yar? It's redundant. Shma minol afnuye. Affecting Gemara Vakati Mufna Mitzad Echad, who it's only on one side. Ha Nichel Amandiam Mufna Mitzad Echad, Limeidim, V'ain Meshiv, and there's no Pircha, and it's a completely iron-fisted, iron-tight, sealed Gzera Shavah Shaper. Everything works out well, and we can derive the Tumah of Mapos in Tumas Mes with Gzera Shavah and Tumas Sheret. El Olamandiyam, according to the Olamandiyam, who says that you need Mufna Mishnei Tzadim. And if it's only Mufna Mitzad Echad Lemeidim Umeshivim, we could have a Pircha, Michael Meimar, as we said before, you in the case of Beged V'or in Sheretz, we said it was Mufna, if it's Mufna, and only if it's Mufna, then we could, if it's only Mufna Mitzad Echad, we can have a Pircha on this Gzera Shavah because of the Chumrah of Sheretz, that's Metame even V'Kadasha. So the Gemara says, Beged Or Demes, Nami Afnu Mufna. Even the words Beged Or in Tumas Mes is also superfluous. Michdi Meis Iskash L'Shichva Zera Tichsiv a pasuk vayikachaf beis vanogev v'chol tamei nefesh o isha sheteitzav imenu shechvas zara. So we have an equation between tumas shechvas zara and tumas mes. Uksiv be b'shechvas zara v'chol beged v'chol or sheyelav shechvas zara tamehu. So Memela, we know that tumas mes applies to Beged and to Kli Ar. And therefore, Beged V'Ar, the Kosev Rachmana, in the parish of Tumas Mes, Lamali, what do I need it for? It's superfluous. Shma Midol Afnuye, it's Mufna Mishnei Tzadim, and therefore Ein Meshivin Al Gzera Shavah. Hani Chlamani Or Don Mina V'Uki B'Asra. Elamani Or Don Mina Umina, that in every limit of Gzera Shavah we derive all the details of the dinim that apply to the Malamed, apply to the Nilmad, is Michael and Meimar. Tumas Mapotz and Mes will not apply except in Tumas Erev. It cannot generate Tumas Shiva. Amar Rava, Amar Kravachi Bastem Bigdechem B'Yom HaShvi. That with regard to Tumas Mes, there's a special ribui in the pasuk, and it teaches us that kol tumos shata mevion metamon b'mes lo yipchusa mishiva. They always have to be 7. So we end up with the gzeres hakosav that mapot that was nitma v'tumas mes is tami shivas yom, and therefore we don't apply the principle don minei mina. So according to Maskoros HaGemara, we don't find the shitas chachamim that will reject Dayo entirely. We have the Shittas Chachamim that we do apply Dayo. In all cases, we have the Shittas Rabbi Tarfon that if there's something left from the Kamma Chover after Dayo, then we will apply Dayo, but we don't apply Dayo if, as a result of that, the entire Kamma Chover goes down the tube, so to speak. Frek the Gemara, utehei shein v'regel chaya b'rshus harab mikal v'chomer. We're going to come to the conclusion that shein v'regel should be chayav in rshus harabim because uma keren shebershus hanizak ena b'shal l'chatzinez. There's a kula in keren of chatzinezek in the rshus hanizak, according to the Rabbanon of Rabbi Tarfon, is b'rshus harabim chayeves, and yet you pay b'rshus harabim. It's shein v'regel, which are more chamur, because b'rshus hanizak the hezek took place b'rshus habaylim mishalim nezek shalem is eno din sheb'rshus harabim chayav. That we should come to the odd conclusion, which is antithetical to everything we've learned here in Bava Kamma, that shein v'regel should be chayav in b'rshus harabim. And therefore, we need a pasuk on makra v'shilach es be'iro bir b'steyach v'lo b'rshus harabim, a special mute to pater up shein v'regel b'rshus harabim because it's not ubir b'stei acher. All right, this leads us to Daf Chavav, which Amir Hashem will study tomorrow. Okay, then. So wishing you a great day. Thank you so much.